Welcome to Veterans Chronicles. I'm Greg Columbus. I'm honored to be joined today by Louis Graziano. He is a World War II veteran of the U.S. Army. He's also the author of A Patriot's Memoirs of World War II. And Mr. Graziano, thank you very much for being with us.
Well, thank you.
Where were you born and raised, sir?
I was born in East Aurora, New York. I grew up there until I went into the service.
Tell us a little bit about your family and growing up in the Depression.
Well, yes, I had, we were 5 children, and my parents came from Italy, and they had time getting started because I didn't know the language good. I remember one time my mother needed some eggs, and she went to the store, and they didn't understand what she wanted, so she squatted down and went like a chicken and went her wings, and the guy got the message and she got the eggs.
Was there any other military service in your family?
Yes, my son was in Vietnam. He was in the Marines, and he's got 2 tours in Vietnam and got 3 Purple Hearts. Then I got 2 grandchildren that are in the Navy.
That's quite a legacy you started.
Yeah.
That's outstanding. So I want to talk a little bit more about you growing up, and that's that you started working as a mason,
Yes,
like your dad.
With my father, yeah.
But another career got your attention.
And then I decided to go to the beauty school because my sister had the beauty shop, and my other sisters worked there too. And so I went to school and learned the styling, went to work with her until I got inducted in the service.
And when was that?
In 1943, January.
Did you enlist or were you drafted?
No, I was drafted. And I went to Fort Niagara. And when I got there, the first night, the captain come in and he says, "You got to cut your mustache off." That didn't make sense to me. But he says, "You have to cut it off or else." And I didn't know what or else was, being a rookie, so I just cut it off. And then I got transferred out of there to Fort Hood in Texas, which was Camp Hood at that time. And I let my mustache grow again, and nobody said to take it off anymore. And when I got down to Camp Hood, I had to, myself and 2 other soldiers, we had to peel 6 bushels of potatoes that first night. Then we were transferred to 6 weeks of combat training. From there, we had 4 weeks of more combat training. And then we were sent to Fort Dix to get ready to go overseas. And the night before we got on a ship, I went to town and had made a record for my father. And the record that I made told him what we was going to do to Mussolini when we got there. And everything I said came true, just like I said. It happened to him. Of course, my father played that record all the time I was gone.
Was Mussolini the reason your father left Italy?
No, he came over
before that?
In his young days, yeah.
Okay.
Before that. But being Italian, I just thought
sure
I'd tell him that, you know. And then we got on the Queen Mary, and they didn't tell us where we were going till the 3rd day out, that we were going to go to England. And then on the ship, you had one night you slept in the deck, and one night in the bunks. So I slept in the bunk the first night, and you got in there and you couldn't turn around. You had to get out and turn over and go back in if you wanted to turn over. So after that first night, I told them they could have it. I'll sleep on the deck every night. And then the storm came up, and the German U-boats were chasing us. So we had to change course every 6 minutes. They had to change direction.
Zigzag.
Right. And between that and the storm that came up, they had to change course and wind up in Scotland instead of England. So when we got to Scotland, then we had to take a train to go to England, at Camp Weston in England. And then when I got to Camp Weston there, the general come up and put me in charge of utilities and gave me 35 men to work with me. We had to put up barracks for the troops that were coming in and did all that. And then I was sent on a special mission, secret mission to London. And I was not to tell nobody what the mission was, ever, which I haven't told anybody yet.
Is it classified or is it this?
It was classified, yes.
Okay.
And I still haven't told nobody.
Good for you.
And while I was there, the V1s and V2s of the Germans were sending down. It was a terrible. I mean, every time came down, they'd whistle, and then they explode. So wherever I was, I put my hands over my head and just lay down there till that exploded. So I was there for 6 weeks, and then I went back to Camp Weston. From there, when we got on the ship, we had to drive 700 miles to go to the English Channel to cross the ocean. And we were supposed to have an assistant driver, and my assistant driver didn't drive. But I didn't let them know that because he was a good buddy of mine and kept me laughing and kept me awake. We had this, every 100 miles we stopped for a 10-minute break. So when we got to the ship, then all my men was with me. I had 35 of them. We loaded up all the trucks and stuff that we needed. And then we landed into Omaha Beach, and we had to just wait till it was time for the third wave. I was in the third wave to go in. Ships had to go around. There was so many ships, it was crowded. And finally, time came in for me to go in. And I drove a gasoline truck off the LST onto the beach, and I jumped out of it real quick and got my guns and flamethrower and a flare and laid down the ground on the beach there with the dead soldiers. And then I had to crawl up underneath the cliff, but I had to move slowly every time the Germans would be shooting. I'd move up a little bit till I got underneath the cliff. Then when I got under the cliff, I got my flamethrower out, and I took 2 of them to shoot that, and we shot up underneath the cliff with a machine gun on top, was shooting down at us. And I put that all on fire underneath them. So that got rid of that machine gun. And then I shot the flare up in the sky, and I knew the Navy would know what I wanted. And they saw that, and they shot and hit the target there and got rid of some more machine guns up there. Then I laid underneath the cliff that night. The Rangers came in. They were the first ones to go up the cliff. They had put these rope ladders up to go up, and they were between 100 and 170 feet high. And as they were climbing, the Germans were cutting some of those ropes, and they had to jump to another rope and keep shooting. They got rid of some of those machine guns on their way up there. I told my men we had to go up, and I lost 2 of my men as we made the landing there. And the ones that didn't have guns, I told them to get the gun off the dead soldiers and follow me up the cliff, which we did, and then we had to fight our way up to it. They were still shooting at us. And we finally got up there, and then we were fighting our way all the way to St. Lo. And that took 43 days to secure. They St. Louis. And then we continue driving, fighting all our way up to Reims, France. And then when I got to Reims, General Thrasher came up to me and put me in charge of the utilities and told me I had to go get some supplies for the soldiers, and we're going to stay there to work at Reims, France. And gave me a book that had French and English in it. So I took one of my men with me. We went to the lumberyard where they had all the stuff that we needed. And I pointed to all the different things that I wanted. And the Frenchman had all the stuff I needed, but he wouldn't sell it to me. So then I turned around, went back to camp. I got me 4 men in a big truck. I says, follow me. We went back over there. I told him I wanted that stuff. And he said, no, can't sell it to you. I said, we're here to free your country and you don't want to sell it to us? So I got my pistol out and pointed it right at him. I says, okay, man, load it all up. So they loaded it all up. And I gave him a paper to take to the army to get his money for all the stuff we got. I went back to camp. I told the general what I'd done. He said, oh, me, we're going to get in trouble. I said, no, we're not, sir. I said, he's afraid I'm going to come back and get him. And we didn't have no trouble.
Let me back up just a little bit here, back to when you're on the beach, because one of the things I've heard from other veterans of that day was the noise, the deafening noise, the commotion of the moment. How would you describe it?
Well, there was terrible noise and all there, but you just had to not pay much attention. You just had to go on because we had a job to do. We had to do it.
How intense was the German fire in that third wave?
Yes, it was. It was terrible shooting.
All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back with more with Louis Graziano, World War II veteran, just after the break on Veterans Chronicles. We're back on Veterans Chronicles. I'm Greg Columbus, honored to be joined today by Louis Graziano, a World War II veteran of D-Day as well as the Battle of the Bulge. And sir, you were just telling us about how you were able to procure your supplies with a little bit of coercion. And ultimately, did you get any trouble for that?
No, I didn't get no trouble for it. I thought I was, but I knew we had to have the stuff, so...
So where did you go then?
With the engineer, and I was working with him, and the general come up there and told the engineer that he wanted for him to get those prefab buildings and make a big mess hall. So general left, and I worked with the engineer, and he couldn't quite figure it out. We was working out there for 3 weeks. And the general come back up after 3 weeks and says, I don't see nothing you've done. He says, well, I'm trying. The general looked at me and he says, can you do it? I says, yes, sir, I can do it. I says, can you not step aside and talk? He says, okay, Major, you stay there. So I said, what I want from you, General, is let me use the German prisoners and give me 2 guards that can speak German and English, and I'll get it up for you. He said, you got it. So General left. Engineer says, you know, engineer, how you think you going to do it? And I wouldn't tell him how I was going to do it. So within 3 weeks, I put the mess hall up. Next thing you know, the general transferred the major out, which was, he was in charge of all the city of Reims and the Little Red Schoolhouse and all. And he put me in charge of all the Reims and Little Red Schoolhouse. So that's how I got into that Little Red Schoolhouse, to be in the room for the surrender.
What was it like in there?
It was terrible in there. I mean, the Germans that came in, they were just straight faces. And they just stood up and didn't smile at all. And finally, they all had a place to sit. There was the British were there, the French and the Russians. All of them had to sign that paper for the surrender. And after that was signed, the Germans, they stood up, just nodded their heads, and then we took them up to Eisenhower had 2 rooms up the hall. He put temporary office there, and he wanted them to come up there to him after we surrounded. He didn't want to be in the room with them when the surrounding was taken. So we took them up there, and they come in, and first thing he asked them was, they satisfied with the way the things went for the signing? They said yes, and he dismissed them. That was the end of that.
Now, you had spent time with Eisenhower before that, right?
Yes, I had to put special telephone line in Eisenhower's headquarters, where he was staying. And I spent 2 nights there with him before I went back to camp. And he was real nice with us. I had my buddy with me, and he said that the officers had enough rank to take care of themselves, so I take care of the listed men.
So you felt he was down to earth and friendly, even with all the pressure he was dealing with?
No, he was real good. He's after the pressure of the GIs. Then, he gave the Rangers these clickers.
Oh, the crickets.
Before they made the invasion,
The crickets, right?
Yeah, like that. That's so they would not give the signal away to the Germans where they can find each other after they drop down. They go after the sound, and they know there was an American that did that. So that really helped them a lot.
Very smart.
Thing.
Wow. Well, let's take another break. We'll be right back with much more with Louis Graziano here on Veterans Chronicles. You're listening to Veterans Chronicles. I'm Greg Corombos, honored to be joined today by Louis Graziano, U.S. Army veteran of World War II and of D-Day, as well as the Battle of the Bulge, and that's what we're going to talk about now. Where was your unit placed at the Bulge?
The captain came in one night in my quarters, and he says, I want you to go on a special mission with me. I said, is that a request or an order? He says, I can put it in order. I said, let's go. So, and it was snowing like anything and cold. We had to go find General Patton's, part of his troops that got lost that he needed in Bastogne. In Bastogne, they were cut off for 6 weeks. The Germans had them cut off. So we went out and we found them between Metz and Reims. And we took them all the way to Bastogne. That's when I got the frozen feet on a trip up to Bastogne. We got them and got them freed from the Germans. And then the captain and I went back to Reims after that. And they put me in the hospital for my frozen feet. They said I got there just in time. It'd been another day I'd have lost them. So they treated them. I was there for 2 weeks, and they said, and I said, I want to get back out my men. I says, well, if you can get a pair of shoes that's 2 sizes bigger and put 2 pairs of socks on, we'll let you out. So I told my mess sergeant, I said, you be, not mess sergeant, my supply sergeant, to go find me some shoes. He did, because he knew I'd give him a hard time if he didn't. So I got out with my men again.
How do your feet respond to cold even now?
Well, I can feel the cold right away. They give me trouble, but I go on.
But that was one of the coldest winters Europe had seen in
it was
forever.
Way below zero, yeah.
So when you had just suffered this and then you go back out, even with a second pair of socks, you're in a lot of pain, right?
At that time, I didn't have the combat shoes to go.
So you're still...
I just had those shoes here, didn't have time to get them. We had to go.
So how did you react when the Battle of the Bulge was finally over? Must have been great relief.
I was well pleased with that because we knew we helped them getting those soldiers up there too. And then Patton got across the Rhine River then, got the Germans.
We've kind of talked about this out of order. So after the Bulge, you went down to Reims?
Yeah, went back to Reims.
Back to Reims, right. So we talked about the moment in the Little Red Schoolhouse with the surrender and Eisenhower's reaction. What was it like for you not to just see the surrender, but to know you were witnessing history?
Well, I was honored and great pleasure to be there for that surrender, and I felt sorry for all the men that we lost that helped us accomplish that.
What did you do immediately after the surrender? What happened to you then?
Well, then I was just putting in time, waiting to go home, really.
And what did you do during that time?
Well, with my buddy and I, he said, let's go to the ball game. I said, okay. So we went to the ball game, and he had his girlfriend with him. The girl that was pitching the ball, I said, who's that lady? And his girl said, that's Bobby. She's my best friend. I said, okay. And I knew where she worked, at the orderly room. She was in the service. And I went to see her the next day, made a date with her. She said, okay. So I went to pick her up. And when I got there, they told me she's already left with somebody. So I turned around and went back to camp. And her girlfriends told her that she'd never get another date with me. She told them she would. And about 3 weeks later, I went back and made another date with her. And this time she was there. And she stayed. And we were together for 63 years.
How soon were you married?
Oh, after that it was a few months. And we got married there, and the Colonel Boshoff let me use his staff car for us to go on our honeymoon to Paris for a whole week.
Fantastic. And you got married in Reims, correct?
Yeah, in Reims, right.
That's a great story. I love that story.
Yeah. And then when it was time to go home, her ship left the day before she had to go with the women, and my ship left the day after. So I got home. Well, I got back in Christmas Day. I figured she should have been already home. I called her house parents over there, and they said no, they hadn't heard nothing from her. So that went on for 30 days.
Couldn't find her?
Before I found out that her ship had wrecked. And another ship had to come from the state. And the Enterprise ship left for the States, and they was going to dry dock. But they had to turn around and go back and get them. And then she finally sent me a letter out. And the letter's in my book that I wrote. I put it in there. And and then when I got, when I landed there, and we were supposed to land in New Jersey, but the storm was so bad we had to land at Virginia. And when we got there, they told us I had to wait 2 weeks before we found somebody to take us to Fort Dix. So I spoke up. I says, I'm the master sergeant here. I says, I can take the group to New Jersey because I'm from New York. So they said, okay, we'll let you. So I took the group. We didn't have to wait the 2 weeks. Then went to New Jersey, got discharged, and went home. Then when I got home, my father, the first thing he did was got that record out and played it. I said, did I say all that?
And by the way, I got married. Although he probably already knew that, right?
Pardon?
Did he know you had gotten married?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. They said, then when she finally got there and went to the house, they said, she's not French. I said, I never did say she was French. But being married over there, they thought I was bringing home a French girl.
So then you went back to your stylist.
Yes,
being a
then I went
stylist,
back.
right?
My sister was still having her beauty shop, so I went back to work in there.
Now, I've heard that, and I've talked to many veterans who struggle to transition back to regular life. From what I've read, you didn't have that issue. It came very naturally to you to go back to the way it was.
There was no trouble getting back with the hair. Of course, there was a lot of things that came out that wasn't going on when I was a stylist. Like the permanents, Then we had machines that we had to curl with the heat and all. And the cold wave permanent came after I left, where they just put the solution on and didn't have to put them under the heat.
Okay.
So I had to learn all that. It didn't take me no time
Okay.
on that.
So a few fads came in before you got home.
Yeah. And the first thing I did when I went to the gas station to get some gas, I pulled up my tank and I left. Just like in the Army, we go.
You didn't pay.
And I got way up the line. I says, ooh, I didn't pay that guy. Of course, I had done business with him before I went in the Army. So he knew me and I knew him. And I used to do his wife's hair. So I went back and said, I wasn't worried about it. I knew you'd come back.
Once you get in the habit, it's hard to remember sometimes.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, you moved south after that at some point?
Well, in the beauty trade, my wife didn't like the snow up north. She wanted to go back south. She was from Alabama.
Oh, okay.
So in the beauty trade magazine, he was looking for a hairstylist in Augusta at Belk's department store. And we was visiting her sister, which lived in South Carolina. I said, well, with this closed, let's go down there and talk to him about the job down there. So I went and talked to him and signed a contract with him to go to work for him. And every week that I was there, they would pay me a salary. And then once I made over the amount of the salary, then I'd get commission too. So they wasn't paying my commission, kept telling me it was coming from headquarters, which was North Carolina. The headquarters was in Charlotte, North Carolina, for that company. And I had a lot of customers that came to me from Thompson, Georgia, which was 35 miles away, to get their hair done. And they told me, well, I ought to come to Thompson and open up a shop. So one of the ladies from Thompson called me one day and says, I found a place for you. I said, okay, I'll take a look and see. So I went up, looked, and rented the place, went back on a Monday morning down at Belk's, and I said, now I want my commission. Says, it still ain't come in. I said, okay, I'm leaving right now. And I had all my pictures and stuff on the wall. I took everything down and put everything on the desk. I said, here, you can check all this over and make sure that I'm not taking none of your stuff. They didn't want to look at it. So I picked up and left. Nope. Went over there and got the shop ready and opened up the beauty shop in Thompson. And got busy all the time. Sometimes I worked till 2 o'clock in the morning.
And that was very successful there, right?
Yeah, it was. And I'm still doing hair.
You're still doing hair?
Yeah, I still got some of my old customers won't turn me loose. So now...
I love it.
Now I just have them call me on my cell phone. I'll say, okay, meet me at the shop.
That's so great.
The shop is still going. My daughter's working it.
That's wonderful. It's a family, multi-generation business now. Mm-hmm. So we only have a couple minutes left in our conversation here, Louis. When you think about your service, what do you think of most? Well,
I think I was honored to be there, and I did everything I was supposed to do. I didn't let nothing bother me. Any job, I was sent to so many different places to do different things, because I was with General Eisenhower's headquarters Special Troop Command. Anytime they needed something special, they'd send me out to do it. I was glad to do it. I think it was an honor.
I had the chance as a student to see the room in the Little Red Schoolhouse where the signing took place, and now it's behind plexiglass with almost silhouettes of who was who sitting at the table and so forth. And obviously it looks a little bit different than it did that day.
Yeah, I took care of that room there, and that was quite a big table there, too. It was.
Yeah, you had to fit a lot of people around there.
Yeah.
Well, Louis, we thank you very much for your service to our country, most of all, and we thank you also for your time with us today. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Louis Graziano is a U.S. Army veteran of World War II. He saw action at D-Day and also served at the Battle of the Bulge and was a witness to the signing of the German surrender on May 7th, 1945.
Last survivor.
Last survivor. Exactly right. I'm Greg Columbus. This is Veterans Chronicles.